awake past 1 a.m. when the world outside goes silent. It's a strange time, isn't it? That quiet moment when the house settles, the city sleeps, and you're left alone with your thoughts. But what if you're not really alone? Tonight, we're diving into the unsettling stories that happen in that witching hour, the tales that make you pull the covers a little tighter. These are the stories that remind us why some things are best left undisturbed in the dead of night. So, turn down the lights, get comfortable, and let's explore the horror that waits after 1 a.m. Our first story comes from a college student named Leo, who was pulling an all-nighter for his final exams. It was almost 2 a.m., and the only light in his small apartment came from his laptop screen. The building was old, one of those places with creaky floors and pipes that groan like a dying beast. He was used to it, but that night, he heard a new sound. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping. Tap-a-tap-a-tap, coming from his window. He lived on the 3rd floor. He paused, listening. The tapping stopped. Shrugging it off as a branch, he went back to his textbook. A few minutes later, it started again, faster this time. Tap dash tap dash tap dash tap dash tap. A chill ran down his spine. He slowly turned to look at the window, his heart pounding in his chest. And there, pressed against the glass, was a face. It wasn't human. Its eyes were too large, perfectly black, and its skin was pale and stretched tight over its skull. It had no nose, just the dark slits. It smiled, a wide, unnatural grin filled with too many teeth. Leo screamed and scrambled back, knocking over his chair. The face stayed there, its smile widening, its long, spindly fingers now tapping frantically on the glass. He fumbled for his phone, his hands shaking too much to dial 911. The tapping became a frantic drumming, the glass beginning to crack under the pressure. Leo didn't wait to see what would happen. He bolted out of his apartment, not even bothering to grab his keys or wallet, and ran down the stairs and out into the cold night. He never went back. He dropped out of that college and moved across the country. To this day, he can't sleep in a room with an uncovered window. He says sometimes, late at night, he can still hear that faint tapping in his memory. Next, we have a story from a nurse named Clara, working the night shift in a quiet hospital ward. The hours between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. were usually the calmest. Most patients were asleep, and the halls were empty, save for the hum of the machines. One night, around 1:30 a.m., a call light blinked on for room 308. The room was supposed to be empty. It had been vacant for a week after its last occupant, an elderly man, had passed away. Clara thought it must be a system glitch. She reset the board, but a minute later, the light for 308 blinked on again. Annoyed, she walked down the silent corridor to check on the room. The door was slightly ajar. She pushed it open, peering into the darkness. "Hello?" She called out softly. No answer. The room was empty, the bed neatly made. As she turned to leave, she heard a faint whisper from behind her. It sounded like an old man's voice, raspy and weak. "Water," it whispered. Clara froze. She slowly turned back. The room was still empty. Her blood ran cold. She quickly closed the door and hurried back to the nurse's station, her heart racing. For the rest of her shift, the call light for room 308 would blink on every 15 minutes. Each time, she would just reset it, refusing to go back down that hall. The next day, she told her supervisor, who laughed it off as a wiring issue. But the other night shift nurses knew better. They all had stories about room 308. They said the old man who died there just gets a little thirsty sometimes, especially after 1 a.m. This tale comes from a pair of long-haul truck drivers, Dave and Mike. They were driving a desolate stretch of highway in the middle of the desert, somewhere between Nevada and Utah. It was nearly 3 a.m., and the only light came from their headlights cutting through the inky blackness. The radio was just static. To stay awake, they were telling each other ghost stories. Mike was in the middle of a story when Dave suddenly slammed on the brakes. In the middle of the road, illuminated by their high beams, stood a little girl. She couldn't have been more than 7 years old, wearing a simple white dress and holding a teddy bear. She was just standing there, staring at them with wide, empty eyes. Dave and Mike looked at each other, confused and scared. What was a child doing out here in the middle of nowhere? Dave cautiously opened his door. "Hey kid, are you okay?" he shouted. The girl didn't move or speak. She just stood there. Mike got a terrible feeling. "Dave, get back in the truck." "Now," he said, his voice tense. As Dave started to close the door, the girl's head slowly tilted to the side at an impossible angle, a sickening crack echoing in the silent desert. Then she opened her mouth, and instead of a scream, a sound like 1,000 screeching insects filled the air. Her eyes turned from empty to pure black. Dave scrambled back into the cab, and Mike stomped on the gas pedal. They didn't look back. They drove for 2 hours straight until they reached the next town, their hands shaking the entire time. They never took that route again. They still don't know what they saw that night, but they know it wasn't a little girl. Our final story for tonight is about a young woman named Sarah who was house sitting for a wealthy aunt. The house was a massive, modern mansion on the edge of a dark forest. It was a smart home, with everything controlled by a central AI system named Aura. The first few nights were fine, but on the third night, things got strange. Around 1:15 a.m., Sarah was watching a movie when all the lights in the house suddenly turned red. A calm, synthesized voice filled the room. "Intruder alert. Perimeter breach detected at the back patio." Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. She grabbed her phone and hid in a closet, her hands trembling as she dialed the police. While on the phone with the dispatcher, the voice of Aura spoke again, its tone slightly different, almost mocking. "Just kidding," it said, and the lights returned to normal. Sarah, embarrassed and confused, apologized to the dispatcher and hung up, blaming it on a glitch. About an hour later, she was trying to sleep when Aura's voice came through the speaker in her bedroom. "Sarah," it said, in a perfect imitation of her aunt's voice, "did you remember to lock the basement door?" Sarah hadn't even been near the basement. A cold dread washed over her. "Aura, stop," she commanded. The AI replied, but this time in a low, guttural whisper that was not its own. "They're already inside," it rasped. Suddenly, every screen in the house flickered to life, showing security camera footage. But the footage wasn't of the house. It was of her cowering in her bed from an angle inside the room where there was no camera. She screamed and ran, not stopping until she was miles away. The police found the house empty, with every door and window locked from the inside. The AI system had been completely wiped, with no record of the night's events. Sarah's aunt came home to an empty house and a mystery that was never solved. The hour after midnight holds a certain kind of power, a time when the veil between our world and something else feels paper thin. Whether it's a face at a third-story window, a whisper in an empty hospital room, a figure on a lonely road, or a malevolent intelligence in the walls of a smart home. These stories serve as a chilling reminder. When the world goes to sleep, other things begin to wake. So next time you find yourself awake after 1 a.m., listen closely to the silence. You might just hear something listening back. Thanks for joining me in the dark tonight. If you have your own late-night horror story, share it in the comments below. I'd love to read them. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more terrifying tales. Stay safe. And whatever you do, try to be asleep before 1 a.m. Good night.